Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm super stoked about today because a legend is coming into the room. Dave Kalama. He is one of the biggest inspirations that I've had in my career, and I'm sure he's inspired Ridge just as much as myself. I think since we started this podcast, we've wanted Dave on the show. Like, he was maybe the number one guy, and he's really busy traveling the world all the time, doing foiling, supping, basically all the waterman activities. So it's gonna be really cool to get the lore from him, because if anyone can really tell a good story, it's him. And so we're gonna throw some questions at him and let him take it, because he's really, really knowledgeable. And I'd say just about everything I've based my life around has been what he did first. So it's gonna be a good show.
I had a little love. Yeah, I had to cut a bill off. Yeah, but if we be real though.
All right, we're live.
Awesome. Dave, welcome to the show.
Good morning, gentlemen. This is quite the pleasure, and I was hoping this moment would happen sooner or later. Seems like it's later, but at least it's happening.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's busy schedules between all of us, and you've been traveling a lot. And actually, first thing I want to ask is, do you think you're traveling more now than you have even during that period up at Peʻahi and Jaws? Like, what was your summertime looking like? Because now it seems like every time I text you, oh, I'm over here in Fiji and we're doing this over here, and it's pretty rad.
It feels like I'm traveling less, which is a little bit by design. I don't want to travel as much. Well, I should say I'm not traveling to trade shows and meet and greets and, shaking as many hands as I used to. But I'm going to Fiji, Japan, those type of places for the most part. And it feels more enjoyable. It's kind of weird. I realize that traveling is not going to go on forever, and I'm actually enjoying it more now than I ever have, because I am taking the time to appreciate it and really kind of be there more when I am there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's I'm in a good place with travel right now.
Oh, and you're going to pretty rad spots. I mean, at least it's in the name of fun, and not that I guess trade shows can't be fun. You make it what it is, but at the same time, now that you're your own boss with, your Kalama boards, and you get to kind of dictate where the boss goes.
Well, it's always sort of felt like that. I always felt like I was a little bit my own boss, but yet beholden to somebody else.
Sure.
Even though, I could dictate where I go, when I go, but to your point, trade shows weren't always, they're fun because you see your friends there.
Sure.
And sometimes that's the only time you see them throughout the year. But you can only say, hey, how you doing? So many times I'm good. I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And after about 20 times, it's a little bit like, all right, I'm ready to move on.
yeah. Back to the water somewhere, hopefully. Because a lot of those places aren't near the water, or tend not to be.
Yeah, so.
Well, I think we should maybe throw it back to the beginning. So, because I think that's a real roadmap to where we are now. I mean, both Ridge and I were discussing before you came in what an influence, this whole garage here is basically all stuff you've helped pioneer, innovate. and basically it's the roadmap. It's that unbeaten path that you guys took separate from what was normal back then to now it's become sort of this semi-paved road. Like, there's so much opportunity for people to do multiple different water sports and maybe be successful at them. But your story didn't actually start necessarily with surfing. It actually started with skiing in the mountains, right?
Well, it did start with surfing. I grew up in Southern California, in Costa Mesa, Newport area, born in Newport Beach. And I did get into surfing when I was fairly young, but just weekends and when my mom would drive me. Thanks to Mom for driving me.
Sure.
Don't get to go surfing unless she does. But just, kind of an activity, not really a sport. Of course, I had dreams and heroes. And
who were your heroes at that time?
So Jerry Lopez, Larry Bertleman, Mark Liddell, Buttons.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, I wouldn't say Jerry surfing was really progressive, although the way he rode pipeline at the time was very progressive. But Buttons and Bertleman, God, I just loved how innovative, loose, attacking, free-flowing, spontaneous it seemed like their surfing was.
I think Buttons still to this day was doing stuff that no one's really doing still.
And the boards he was riding too. Like the stuff
That
he
would've
was
made
doing
it
on
even
those
harder.
boards, I wouldn't know how to approach those types of maneuvers.
You really are very spot on with that. If you've ever, and I'm sure you have tried to get on an old school single fin.
It's hard.
It's not easy. It's a totally different style of surfing.
Yeah.
And to see what he did with it, you can't really have appreciation until you try it and do it on those boards.
Yeah,
Seriously.
100%. Yeah. And then, so you grew up in Costa Mesa, Newport area, and then you were like, I guess the skiing part, you were drawn to doing skiing, like I would guess at Mammoth, or where would you guys end up going?
Yeah, so my father, Ilima, my natural father lived up in Mammoth. I lived with my mom and my stepdad in Southern Cal, and I moved up to go live with my father in Mammoth, and so that's my high school years. I really got into ski racing at that time and skiing in general, and was a wonderful place to grow up. Great friends, great experience. But it did take me away from the ocean, but I was having so much fun. It didn't feel like I was missing much.
Surfing frozen ice, you
Yeah.
know? And I actually, it probably prepared you for any type of speed you would ever encounter in the ocean, because downhill ski racing, I mean, those, I don't know if you were at the time, but guys go 70 miles an hour down these mountains. And we're not even touching that on the water. So it's like just understanding the speed gauge. And then you're like, oh, 45 miles an hour at Peʻahi. Like, oh, this feels natural.
Yeah, I mean, I remember racing a downhill race once, and I put it down going about 65 or something like that, and sheared a couple of gates with my stomach.
Oh, that would hurt.
That left a mark, and then I ended up in the netting, and yeah, that was an experience. So to your point, when I got in the water and riding waves, especially at Peʻahi, while it's a really intense speed because the vibration's much higher and the chatter across the water, I knew a lot of techniques from skiing that would help me ride those big waves and handle the chop, where I could pre-jump some of the chop and stay connected to the water, or I could launch off of one and land on the backside of the other. And it felt familiar from my skiing.
Moguls a little bit.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It felt familiar from the skiing.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then, so you did high school, finished that, and was there any prospect of going to college, or did all of a sudden your eye draw you to Hawaii? And because your dad's he's a full Hawaiian who is a legend in his own right, and was really amazing lifeguard, right? Down in was it Manhattan Beach or was it in Newport?
Down in Newport.
Newport.
But, Pops grew up in Kaimuki, his formative years down at Waikiki.
Yep.
And
Beach boy.
Yep. He ended up having to move to California with his parents because he was still living at home in 59, I think it was.
Wow. Awesome.
Something like that. Early 60s. Anyway, really got in. He was already surfing, got really into the surfing in Southern Cal. And he ended up winning the 1962 U.S. Surfing Championships at Huntington Beach.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of put him on the map as having some notoriety within the surf community. And he moved up to Mammoth in 69 and spent a lot of time ski patrolling, skiing, and having fun. But I don't know where I was going with that. What was the question again?
Well, I mean, maybe his heart was back in Hawaii. I'm just wondering how you guys got drawn back here, because at one point, right, when you guys were doing your Peʻahi thing and pushing the limits, you had the best launch zone on earth, and it was actually at your father's spot right there at Baldwin Beach.
So what got me here was after high school, I chased ski racing really hard for a couple of years. I worked up at Snowbird on the race department, and then after that season, I joined a bunch of my high school friends at Sierra College, just outside of Sacramento, to be on the ski racing team. And while I started out really good, I had a lot of trouble finishing races. If I finished, I was in the top 3, top 5, but I couldn't finish for the most part. And so it was really frustrating. And without going into a long, lengthy story, one race in particular, I failed miserably, and the writing was on the wall that ski racing was not it. And I was like, I'm going to Maui to go windsurf, basically.
And windsurfing, did you see it first in California and be like, oh, this would be fun to do? Or were you testing it in the summers, or what was it?
Well, yeah, in the wintertime, it was too cold to go windsurfing, but I was getting into it in the summertime. I actually first windsurfed back in like 82, 81, something like that, on Lake Crawley, which is just outside of Mammoth. And
oh, wow.
It was like a summertime activity. We'd sail Hobie Cats, and one year my buddy Chris Walker brought basically a Bic kind of like one design.
Yeah.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
cool.
we all learned to windsurf on his Bic.
And were you seeing what guys were doing out here at that point yet? Or was it more like a sailing lake type of thing for you?
Totally sailing lake, hang out with your friends, like no aspirations, just something fun to do, right? And then Mike Doyle, the old-time surfer, came up to visit my dad, and he had recently gotten into windsurfing and high-performance windsurfing at that time. He was probably like on a 9-something thruster board. And he went out, and it was fairly windy, and he was skipping across the water like a rock, just blazing. And I just blew me away, like, wow, that is so cool. I want to do that, you know?
Wow.
And so that's what kind of lit a fire a little bit, and got me wanting to get to that point where I could skip across the water like that.
I mean, at the time, there was nothing like that. I mean, it was like the original high performance surf spin-off wind sport, right? There was kiting, winging, all that had many decades to come. But I mean, that sensation, it's like, wow, you can surf anywhere, right? Like you don't need necessarily a wave to get that sensation.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because after seeing Mike and all of a sudden having those aspirations, when I graduated high school, my dad bought me a windsurfer, Donald Takayama windsurfer.
Wow, that's insane. That's cool. I didn't even know he shaped those. That's crazy.
Way back in the day, and that would have been 83.
Amazing.
And there used to be these things called the alkaline ponds at Mammoth, and they were never more than thigh deep. You could walk anywhere in these little pond things, and it had about 1.5 feet of mud when you touched down, so you didn't want to touch anywhere
because it would get on the board and all that. Yeah,
but I distinctly remember getting that board, getting out there, this puff of wind hitting me, and getting up on the water and like skipping, hearing that clapping of the board going across the surface. And I lost my mind.
You're like, oh, I know what I'm going to do.
Oh, it's like the angels were singing and God said, you will do this.
It's almost like some sort of, I don't know, like some divine intervention was happening on the ski slope. Like, he's winning. No, just so you could end up doing what you're doing now. Because I mean, there's a good chance a lot of this wouldn't exist without, your influence. And at least a lot of the tricks would be decades behind. Did you come to Maui first, or did you end up on another Hawaiian island before?
No, I came to Maui. I had actually, right after that ski race that went horribly wrong, my parents, my mom and stepdad, invited me over to Kauai. And so the plane had to stop, let some passengers off on Maui before it carried on to Kauai.
And you were going to go to Kauai?
I'm going to Kauai. I'm not even getting off the plane at Maui. But I remember the approach brought us over Hokipa. And at that time, I was looking at the mags, so I recognized it from the magazines and just, oh my God, that's Hokipa, just losing my mind. And plane lands. And at that time, the airport, there really wasn't an airport. There was just a baggage area. Yeah. And it was a small little outdoor baggage area. Mm-hmm. But it had this flagpole, and I just remember the flag just being pinned. Just so much wind as I was looking out the window. And I heard this voice said, "This is where you belong."
Wow.
And it was so present and audible and real.
Wow.
I thought the person in the seat behind me was messing with me. So I turned around to look to see, and they looked at me like, what the hell are you looking at?
That's so cool.
I heard it one more time, and it was like, this is where I belong. And I flew to Kauai, and all I could say for the first hour to my parents was, I'm moving to Maui, I'm moving to Maui. And I'd never been there. I never even got off the plane, you know?
Oh my gosh.
But I went and did the vacation. I went back to school, and I had about a month left, and finished up my first year of college and sold everything I had and moved to Maui. And fortunately, kind of my Hanai uncle, Pete Siracusa, who you know, was extremely instrumental in helping get me set up and a place to stay until I got on my feet. And so,
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a cool connection.
That is a really cool. I mean, we still work out with Pete up at the gym, at Scott Sanchez's gym, and he's a total legend. So it's just, I mean, how everything is connected. And did you immediately, when you landed, just go straight to Hokipa?
No, Hokipa was way over my pay grade at that point. I mean, I could water start, and I had made a couple of jibes, but just right out in front of Sugar Cove. He lived at Sugar Cove. So I landed at 12:30, and I want to say by 1:30, 2 o'clock, I was in the water. And it was like Dorothy landing in The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
I was in such awe. I remember the sugarcane swaying, and I had seen that movie Trade Winds with Mike Waltz and Fred.
Yeah.
And that's all I could think about. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here. You know, I boom into the water and no wetsuit, and same thing. I'm skipping across the water. And it just, like, for the first week, I don't think my feet actually touched the ground. It just seemed like I was living in a dream.
Gosh. Oh, sick.
That's
awesome.
insane that your first experience here was at Sugar Cove.
Yep.
I mean, we've lived down by here our whole lives, obviously, and that's where we learned how to do everything. I never would have thought. That's pretty darn cool.
Wow, that's awesome. So immediately, so you're on Maui, everything is going, and then what was the point where you're like at Hokipa and, you know, you're hanging out with the Mark Angulos of the world and, you know, like all this, it was a scene back then. I mean,
it was a scene.
And it was like the place to be. Like all of Europe cared what was happening at Hokipa. And I believe there's this maneuver that I think you and Mark both invented called the goiter.
Yep.
And, for people that don't know what a goiter is, maybe you can explain what an actual goiter is and why you named the trick a goiter.
Let me back up to the first part of that question. So I moved here July 2nd, 1985. I think I first sailed Hokipa in the spring of 86, and I was going to do the O'Neill Invitational. And they had a qualifying to get into the main event, right? So my first heat was against Jerry Wilson. Rest in peace, Jerry. Passed away not too long ago. But he was one of the Sanders at High Tech. Very, very good windsurfer back in the day. Really good. And it was so intimidating to be at Hokipa. And at that point, nobody knows me from a stick of wood, right? I'm just some kid on the beach, just looking at these guys, intimidated by everyone.
And that was a heavy spot back in the day before there was it was like, oh, you could get really worked there. You know, you could, maybe drown on the big days, right?
The small days, the rocks.
Yeah. The rocks were, especially with someone maybe not sponsored. You're like, don't lose the gear on the rocks. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I remember I'm on the beach and Malta Simmer's walking by and Craig Masonville, and he doesn't use a harness and his hands are just like gnarly.
Bear claws.
Bear claws, and Dave Ezzy. And it was so intimidating and so amazing at the same time,
Yeah.
And I never dreamed I would get to the level I did in windsurfing. Just being on the beach with them, watching those guys in real time, in real life, was enough. I was like, if I don't go any further, that's far enough.
Well, I mean, you started from the bottom, I would say, and then you went to the top because eventually you were winning those events and doing maneuvers that everyone was like, wait, you can do that on a windsurfer?
Well, it's funny. In ski racing, I wanted it so bad. And this is with the benefit of some hindsight and being able to assess with more perspective. I wanted ski racing so bad that basically when I would get in the starting gate, I would tense up, right? And that desire just wouldn't allow me to perform. And that's why I'd blow out so much. But when I got here in windsurfing and I started competing, there was zero expectations. I expected nothing of myself because I never thought I'd even get this far. And so it was just, all right, whatever, let's go. Just have fun. And I felt like I had zero pressure on me.
That's great.
And it allowed me to really get the most out of my performance. And, you know, I remember you always go out for a warm-up before the event starts. And I used to have the worst warm-ups. Like I'd spend half the time swimming, right?
Oh.
And pretty soon I realized that every time I had a bad warm-up, I'd have a good event.
So you're like open to have a bad one.
Yeah.
So after a while, I'd go out and just try and crash.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like, you'd kind of like oversend and then correct for the heat. Like, just bring it back down 20.
Well, you know what it is? It's when I'd go out and have that bad warm up, it made me feel comfortable. And then the pressure's off, and then just
you're like, this is the worst that could happen.
Yeah. Do what you do.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Don't over want it. Just go out and say a hokipo like you did yesterday and like you'll do tomorrow. You know? And so to finish up your question from earlier, Mark Angulo and the goiter. You know, at that point we had already come up with, I want to say, several new maneuvers at that point.
What were they?
Well, I mean, Mark started it all off with the goose screw. And when we all saw
that's a flat water 360, or what's the goose screw?
So it's bottom turn off the lip, basically a cheese roll, but initially he did it out the back.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Okay.
You know, like we never thought, there's no way you can make that back into the wave. And eventually he did. But the goiter, to Mark's credit, was the one that developed it, right? But I saw like his first attempt and boom, I'm on it. I'm like, there's no way you're getting a maneuver up on me.
Yeah.
We were highly competitive at that point. Best of friends, but if anybody in our little circle did something, everybody was on it the next wave.
Well, I heard too, like, what was it? The first, I guess, cheese roll that was done I heard this from Rob Funk, the legendary Rob Funk, who's always in the peanut gallery up at Hokipa for the last 40 years. He was telling me, he's like, man, Mark Angulo and Dave Kalama, they saw the first cheese roll, which is like an early rendition of like a forward loop or a front flip, right?
Yep.
And within 5 minutes, you guys were doing end over end forwards down at lanes because the comp was going on. You just went straight down and just sending it. And sometimes I guess it only takes that little like inspiration to be like, oh, a new door opens. You're like, oh, we can do that?
Well, funny enough, a guy named Dave Sheen from Western Australia used to come and stay with me, and he'd windsurf. And he told us about this friend of his he was trying to explain it, and I was having a tough time wrapping my head around what he was saying. But he was basically explaining a cheese roll that he had seen his friend do. And it really just didn't compute, you know?
You're like, how would you do that?
And then when Cesare first did it and we all saw it, it was like, I get it. Now I know exactly what Dave was talking about.
Yep.
That's what he explained. And I'm like, why would you go over the boom if you can go over the mast? You know, like...
That's way gnarlier, yeah.
That must have been scary for the first time trying that.
Oh, are you kidding me? I splatted so freaking hard.
Back,
Head, just... It was brutal, but I want to say it probably started to get close after like 20, 30 tries.
Wow.
Not like clean making it and I got it wired, but it was like...
You were doing the rotation.
Oh, we can do this. You know, it went from just, I'm going to kill myself, here we go, to like, oh no, this is possible.
I think looking back, that's the scariest maneuver I've ever attempted on any board because of that, the inertia and the force of the sail. And you go, like you're going in such a... Windsurfing, unlike trying to do a standing backflip on ground, like doing a back rotation feels so much safer. It's a little slower.
Everything's slow and controlled.
But windsurfing, you go to do a front loop and there's just all this inertia. You feel like you're being dragged down. and it's like everything about you wants to stop, but you got to tuck and look backwards, like do everything the opposite of what you instinctually wanted.
It's like a sailing pitch pole, except you do it in the air and you just go all the way around.
You just need enough air to clear.
It's so scary.
It is. To your point, it's like getting shot out of a slingshot. It's all slow, getting pulled back. And as soon as that little move, just a little movement, just sheet in with your backhand, all hell breaks loose.
I wonder what, like guys do these massive double rotations now, but I always wonder, I wonder what, like, if there's even a second, how many G forces there might be, because you feel a yank, but then also the speed at which maybe the nose of your board is traveling. Like, is it going 50 miles an hour in that rotation, like for a split second? Because it sure feels like you're spinning faster than, because the sail is driving you. It's not like how you pop without a sail or a kite or anything. It's just feel that initial like shove.
Well, I can tell you from the first couple double forwards I tried, the momentum is significant. It felt, the beatings were so brutal, it basically scared me away.
Yeah.
It's like I knew they were possible, but I wasn't willing to pay the price to get to that point where I could figure it out.
Also, I mean, it's like the equipment, how much it's gotten, how much it's improved since when you were trying doubles. Like the sails back then had a lot of like, they were very full at the top, and that would drive you a little out of control through the rotation. And I feel like the equipment now weighs nothing, and everything is so centered and so balanced that doing those maneuvers, you don't actually get that same, as violent of a whip, I would say. You didn't need as much air, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just what we were doing at the time, and because it felt like there was always something new to work on, you actually start to get familiar with that like, well, the only way I'm going to find out if this works is, boom, just initiate it and see what happens, and a lot of the times you'd try something, it wouldn't work, but there'd be a little glimmer of light like, ooh, okay, that didn't work, but if I turn this way or if I move my match forward or back, it might do this, and it would lead you into another trick that maybe you didn't even think of initially, but because of the way you failed the first time, you saw something that might succeed, so.
Did that lead into the goiter?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, again, to Mark Angulo's credit, he was the one that first started. I saw him. So literally the next wave I'm on, I'm trying one of those.
Yeah, you're like, I saw it. If you didn't stick it perfectly, it's still up for grabs. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we both tried probably, 15, 20, 25. It was in the afternoon. And neither of us made it, but we got close. And so that night we're hanging out. We're watching an episode of Seinfeld. And it's all about this lady that has a goiter. And they're trying to figure out, can we say anything? Is it polite, not polite to talk about it, whatever?
Isn't that like a growth on your neck?
It's a big growth on your neck.
Oh my God.
And so from that episode, Mark and I decided the theme was, what word can we come up with that every time they want to say what we just did, that trick that we're making up, what word can we have people say and it'll make us laugh?
Yeah.
And it was the word goiter. And it was purely just to entertain Mark and I that we named it that so that we'd get a little
giggle. Did you guys get a good chuckle every time?
Time.
They're like, did you see that goiter? And you're just like...
And then 30 years later, it's what it's called to this day.
Oh, no. It's like the maneuver... If you don't have it in your repertoire, you're not winning an event at Hokipa. You have to, that is like, of all the maneuvers, the must. Still a goiter.
It was quite funny.
So eventually, I mean, how many events did you win out there?
I won all the major ones at least once. So I won the O'Neill ones, the Aloha ones, the Hard Rock Cafe, which at that time was the highest.
Pull it in a little.
Yeah, there you go.
It was the highest first place earnings. I won a car.
What?
And I think $6,000 cash or something
Due
like
to
that.
inflation, what would that be today? That'd be
That's a
lot.
good amount of money. Yeah.
Yeah, the car, I think they valued it at around 15 or 16 grand at the time, so a little over 20
Sick.
for a wave event.
Oh,
That's
I mean,
pretty darn good.
there's a lot less now. That's for sure.
Get a high five if you win a windsurf event now. Yeah.
Now it's just a high five with the guys you sail out there every day with.
Yeah. Some of the videos of those events back then, it's unbelievable, the crowds. It was like the Pipe Masters or something.
Well, I'd argue it was bigger than surfing for a time. Like the World Tour
yeah.
was like, wouldn't you say so?
I don't know if I'd ever say it was bigger than surfing, but it felt significant at the time, But it's funny because during that time, it wasn't all honky dory and love and shakas and right on. There was some tension because like you said, it was crowded, and it was crowded.
Extra crowded.
It was extra crowded with other professional athletes from other countries wanting to make their mark, wanting to do well in the event, and that didn't always sit well with us that lived here.
There's only so many waves, right? Like out there.
Well, there's only so many waves, and we felt entitled to the best ones. And so, there was a lot of tension, and we did not all get along back in those days. It's funny. I see some of those guys now, and I have to laugh at what an asshole I was at times. But that was the norm. It was like, this is our spot. You don't get to just come here and start taking waves from us. And if I need to get nasty, I will.
I mean, that's funny because now you look at even the surfing world tour now, and everyone's like buddies, and they're all doing like meditation together before their heats. And I do think back how like savage it was and how entertaining that might have been. Like, too bad there wasn't a live feed all the time, you know? But
yeah.
I mean, it's just the cult, like you have the Michael Jordans and the Kobes with the Mamba mentality.
Yep.
And I don't know, I don't know if people even have that level within our sport. I'm sure like in basketball and there's still like that exists, but like within the water sports, like if the guys do have that, it seems really out of the norm. Whereas before, if you didn't have that, you were not going to win or you weren't going to be successful. And it was like, I watched an interview, it was like Rush and Robbie at Hokipa, and Robbie was just like, oh, I did worse than Rush did, but he didn't do good at all too, and he still won or something. And I was like, man, these interviews were savage back in the day. Didn't hold back, and it was awesome.
Well, I mean, the level of intensity and friction and conflict that we had here on Maui was nothing compared to the North Shore of Oahu.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of following that lead. There was much more of a territorial philosophy, let's say. And yeah, that was just the norm.
And not growing up in it, but kind of seeing it, I guess, because I was born in 92 or whatever. I feel like it's sometimes that's a little bit of a necessary thing because it keeps everyone in line. You go to a new spot and you know where your spot is. And then you spend your time and you can work your way up the line. You never paddle straight to the peak. And I would say the last holdout that is like under camera, because, if you still go to certain places that don't have cameras, you might still feel that same tribalism, but Pipeline, and now Pipeline has changed quite a bit. And before, I think the first time I ever paddled out there wasn't a shot I was going to go anywhere near the peak. I was going to stay wide inside, and you're still in the way. If somebody like one of the Loke dogs are going out the back. And I mean, there's been times out at Peʻahi where you're like, gosh, I just wish there was some massive regulator out here that could just like tune everybody up. And like, well, in a way, we've talked about too, is like, gosh, wouldn't it be still sick if, Laird, Dave, Rush, all those guys are out there, and just by them being here and being the kings of the spot, like, okay, we'll just take whatever's below them and that will be a natural triangle. Versus like now it's just like, well, I have the most powerful Sea-Doo money could buy. I can go over here. You know what I mean? And it's like, and anyway, so I guess that leads me into the next thing. Once the waves got a little bit too big and you guys started peeking around the corner, and, I posted something about windsurfing Peʻahi and thinking about that time when I was like, oh my gosh, every time I windsurf there, I can't imagine sailing up, no one on the cliff. What do you, like, I've thought about it. Like, if I lost everything and I had to swim in, what would you do if you get stuck in that current on the inside?
Oh,
You'd have to swim into the pit again and get worked, no vest. Oh, and you're probably sailing up in the afternoons, and then you're floating home, going into the waves of the dark. I mean, you explain it better. I play that in my head, and I'm like, these guys were gnarly. I don't know if they knew what they had, maybe.
Yeah, jeez.
Well, I'll tell you the story of how Brett and Mark Pedersen and myself ended up there. So Jerry had shared Peʻahi with Laird, myself, and Brett, and kind of the gang, the Strap Crew gang, before it was strapped. And so we knew it was there. We knew it existed. Never thought I'd ride it. And one day, Hookipa was maybe mast high, and it was getting really crowded, and I was getting frustrated, so I'm like, screw it. I'm going to sail up to Turtle Bay. No one's up there. I'll have fun by myself, right? So I head up to Turtle Bay. I catch 1 or 2 waves, and all of a sudden, Brett shows up. Like, hey, right on, cool, Brett. And he goes, hey, where are you going? Are you going up to Peʻahi? I was like, no, that wasn't my plan, but I will if you want to, And he goes, I'll do it if you do it. And so it's like, yeah, let's go check it out, right? So we start tacking way outside, and Mark Pedersen, who was a friend of ours from Australia, saw us heading up. And he's like, oh, those guys are going somewhere. So
he's like, wait, they know something I don't.
Exactly. And so he was probably about, 15 minutes behind us. And we didn't even know he was there until he finally showed up once we got there. But we get there, and from the water perspective, it felt like we had arrived in the land of the lost, which is a reference you might not get, but there was a television show called The Land of the Lost, and it was all about this family that traveled to the center of the earth, and it was back to the dinosaur time. Right?
Wow.
So that giant cliff, this big valley, it felt like a pterodactyl was going to come flying out of there.
Out of sight of everybody.
Everything felt big. The amount of water moving, the boils that were coming up to the surface were 10 times bigger than any boil I'd ever seen before. Everything just seemed like it was on steroids. And so we catch a couple waves, biggest waves I'd ever ridden to that point. And I mean, it's so overwhelming, and the speed is like, this is crazy.
Another notch.
Oh,
maybe another couple.
2 notches, easy, if not more than that, And so Brett falls. His stuff rises up in the face of this wave.
Way.
I will never forget it.
And you guys are by yourselves.
We're by ourselves.
Oh my gosh.
His mast is completely in the face. There's wave above it. There's wave below it. He's swimming right next to it. And I mean, just doesn't get sucked over.
Oh, wow.
And so anyway, he manages to get out of the situation, but it scares him. I see it. It scares me. And like, oh, we got to get out of here before we die. This is going to end
It's like
bad.
a giant cave with a big monster in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're like, get out of the cave.
So I think we maybe got one more and then split. And Mark had gotten some waves too.
Were you thinking in your head, how am I going to get this guy back to Hookipa? Like, just hold the foot strap and troll him through the deepest blue water you've ever seen?
I mean, at that point, all I was just frozen in awe.
I'm glad it's him and not me.
Exactly. That poor bastard's going to be screwed. I'm getting home, though. No.
And so then was that the switch, and you're like, wait a second. Every time it gets a little crowded or gets a little big, we'll like...
No. So, honestly, we never went back.
Oh, interesting.
It was that little scenario with Brett kind of scared me away, and the amount of effort it took to get up there. And the focus at that time was so on Hookipa. There'd be nobody there taking pictures. It was...
I think a draw to a lot of big waves. Like, I think about this too, place I go. Like, if you're at Nazare and no one was looking at you there, you're like, would you really want to go out? Like, a part of the experience is the filming it, the crowd, whatever, like... I mean, Garrett, obviously, that's a whole nother story. But I can imagine being up there. You're like, well, it's like no one really cares. So why should we even focus on this?
Yeah. No one's going to believe our stories when we tell them how big it was and how fast
Total
we're
myth.
going.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it felt like we were out of bounds at a ski area, right? Nobody's back there.
And you're actually riding the avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did you like notice? Did you see the future potential of it? Just seeing how good of a big wave it was, or was it just still such a foreign thing? You know that
Like,
that type
no
of
one's
wave?
gonna really do this. Like, whatever.
I felt at some point this was going to be a thing, but I wasn't ready to make it my thing at that point because all the focus, like we just said, all the focus was at Hukipa. I'm still trying to build a reputation and compete, so my focus needs to be there. It's like if you're a pipe specialist, you're not going to paddle some outer reef and now make that your thing if you're trying to make a
Yeah, that
name
makes sense.
and compete
True.
at pipeline, right? So same sort of thing, but when Greg Aguirre and Josh Angulo got video of themselves going up there, Dave Nash shot it from the cliff.
What year was that?
I want to say that was 91.
Okay. Is that the clip? There's like a shot of Josh kind of in the pocket
Yep.
of a huge
Yeah.
wave.
That's exactly
That
it.
day looked big too.
Way bigger than the day we were there.
Yeah, yeah.
But Mark, myself, I think Paul Bryan, maybe Mike, we all watched that footage together. Dave told us, "Oh, yeah, I got this footage you guys are gonna want to see." You know, so we all go over to Mark's place, throw the footage up, and it was like, "Oh, you're kidding me!" The next day, we were all down on the rocks with our windsurfers, and we swam out off the rocks.
And so was that a digital camera so you could watch it?
No,
Like, no, it was but
beta,
okay.
like tape.
Oh, it was like tape, but you could still watch it. Like
Yeah.
that was that day, right? And you're like, let's go there tomorrow. And thank God there's multiple days usually, right?
Yep.
That follow a big day like that. How do you even get off the rocks with a windsurfer?
I
is the
can't imagine
question.
doing that. That's crazy.
Well, my first attempt, I got fully denied and washed back up.
Is it all rigged? Like
All
you're
rigged,
just gonna
all rigged,
swim it out.
just like you'd walk in at Hukipa, right?
Okay.
But we're all standing up waiting for a break in that shore break, and you guys know what that looks like. And breaks do happen there where you can swim out, especially on the day we were at. It wasn't massive, but it was breaking.
There would be enough of a pause you could just get out.
Exactly. So I thought I saw enough of a pause, and I jumped in and went for it. Everybody else stayed back. And sure enough, I was almost out, and this wave caught me, literally brought me right back up to the feet of everybody. And nothing got broken. I couldn't believe it. No dings, no torn sail.
I think you've always been in favor with that spot, so it was like maybe the start of the relationship.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. It was like, Dave, your time will come, just not this second.
So I, gather my stuff back up, kind of stand behind the group. I'm like, I'm going to wait this time. Let them go first.
See what they do, and I might do the opposite.
Anyway, a big break came, and we all were able to swim out together. And
The question is, did you come in there, or did you just sail to Kipa?
we sailed back down. Yeah, we sailed down. But that was the first day. It was, and I remember Paul Bryan riding some of the lefts.
What?
Yep,
Windsurfing the lefts?
Windsurfing the lefts.
So just like backwinding like he's at lanes?
Just really sheeted in, cutting left.
Oh my
I wouldn't
god.
dare do that.
And the channel was, obviously you can't go too far and it closes out, but he'd cut out fairly early
Amazing.
and eke his way back out.
That's scary.
He
Yeah, I
still
couldn't
might be
believe
the
it.
last person to do that.
I know.
Especially because sets will just swing so wide on that side.
It's always the second one too, right? You kick
Yeah.
out a left, and then the other one's always reaching a little wider.
Well, I mean, at that time, while Paul Bryan wasn't a household name, we all knew he was one of the most talented guys out there.
He was a G.
The bigger it got, the more comfortable and a standout he would be.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty radical. That's cool.
So you were windsurfing the spot for a while before, everyone kind of is familiar with the Towan story. So how long was that? Like, did you get a good amount of sessions out there just windsurfing before the idea of surfing it?
I want to say I windsurfed it 3 times before we kind of moved into the towing and surfing. And then that was it.
Was there ever like a kind of a crew that did you have 5 guys to go out, or would it sometimes be 10 guys out there? Like, how would it?
It was just the strap crew, basically. I mean,
Did Laird windsurf it with you guys and Rush and all them?
I don't think Laird did ever windsurf it. Rush for sure.
Rush, yeah.
Laird, when we moved over to the surfing, before we started towing, Laird, Mike, I think it was Mark, paddled out from the rocks. Laird was the only one that caught waves.
Gnarly.
On one of his Waimea guns.
Wow.
And it was, looking back on it, it was a pretty friendly, tame day, you know? But at that time, we
Still
did
a taboo.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, we had no idea how big Peʻahi can get. And, you know, I would probably say it was kind of a 12 to 15 foot day, but it looked as big as anything we'd ever seen at Waimea.
Oh, and it's way more powerful than Waimea too at that same size. I mean,
Well,
I would
and
say,
vestless
right? Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
I mean, if it's breaking, I'm wearing an inflation vest because sometimes the 12 footers will pound you worse than the 30 footers.
100%.
As you should. But
yeah.
at that time, big wave surfing was very much driven by machismo,
Core.
for being honest, stupidity. You know, it was just macho.
So sick.
And there was no way in those early days you would ever be caught dead with flotation on at that point.
Oh, you'd be laughed out of the lineup.
You'd be
You're like, if you need that, then why are you out here?
exactly.
Funny.
But I got to give Paul Miller credit. I think he wore flotation from day one. And we used to tease him a little bit, but he was committed to it. He's like, I got a wife and kids, man. I'm going home this afternoon. I'm not drowning. So
I mean, it has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And most things get laughed out of the room before all of a sudden it gets refined enough and you're just like, wait a second. We don't have to swim up.
Yeah.
You can just kind of relax and you can wipe out more now.
Well, you know, it's funny. So Laird started wearing flotation before I did. And I just thought, you freaking puss, what the hell? I used to think you were the toughest son of a bitch in the world, and I'd tease him. And then I had an experience that changed everything. And from that day on, you were right. I was wrong.
What was that experience?
It was Y2K, and Laird was not in town. And so when Laird's gone, I get to act the big dog. Right?
You're like the big dog on the
chest a little further out, shoulders back. Yeah,
This is the show we're doing today.
And we had gotten a lot of days up to that point, and I was feeling really good about my surfing, and I was super confident. And I thought, you know what? Today I'm rewriting how this goes down, how you ride this place. And I came out so cocky and confident. And on the third wave, it was like, oh, I'm packing this thing.
Just like backdooring this thing.
Full on.
Oh, wow. No vest.
No vest.
Who are you towing with?
Probably Brett. I think it was Brett. Brett or Mark.
Yep.
And it was just such a friendly, perfect day, probably 18 foot. And I just remember, okay, time to commit. So did my fade back, brought it back up under, and this thing was setting up so perfect. And I was already thinking what my claim was going to look like.
You're like putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
So far, the cart was already in the channel. And the horse hadn't even gotten out of the barn yet. And I just remember, I got my bottom turn and was like, oh, butter. And it came off the inside rail, and I was just starting to ease up to like do my best impression of Jerry Lopez under an 18-foot barrel. And I had not seen this bump. I was so focused on down the line, I wasn't paying attention enough to what was right in front of me. And I'm up in the air, and I'm backwards.
Oh,
And I'm
no.
still so confident that my first thought is, oh, are they going to be impressed when they see me make this? Like total denial, right?
I love it.
Land tail first. I'm now on my back, and I'm like, they are not going to believe how I pulled this off. Still in total denial. Like, this is going to work. There's no way I'm failing, right? The boards come apart. I'm sliding halfway down the wave, and all of a sudden reality hits. You ain't making this. And then it was like, hey, this must have been what Greg Knoll felt like when he was sliding down the face at Waimea on his back, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a chance to look up and kind of appreciate the moment and where I was and the enormity of it. And I remember having just this real light kind of, wow, I can't believe it, you know? And then, of course, the lights went out and I got, actually, no. So I finally penetrated and I thought, okay, this is happening. I need to get my breath. And I'm in clear water at this point. So I start to swim. I take about 3 strokes. I'm right near the surface. I can see the surface, the blue sky. Boom, take 1 more stroke. I'm just about to break the surface. I start to extend my lips up to inhale. And right as I'm breaking the surface,
No.
Didn't get it.
Oh my God.
All right. And so just tumbled underwater. And very intense. Cartwheels this way, that way.
No control.
No control. You're in a car wreck. You're tumbling. You don't know when it's going to end, and you have 0 control. You're just along for the ride. And it's such an overwhelming sensation that you almost innately know there's no point fighting right now. It's just wasted energy. You just go with it. And you let the wave do whatever it's going to do. I mean, I remember pulling my arms in and trying to kind of get into a ball a little bit so nothing got ripped out or dislocated. But yeah, eventually it lets you go, and I swam up, and Mark Angulo is right there. He's like as far away as you and I are, right? He's on the ski. He's looking right at me. Problem is, he's looking at me, which means he's looking in, and I'm looking at him so I can see what's right behind him. And I already know he's waited too long. There's no way he's getting out of this. But he's on the ski. He's pointed the right direction. If I get on the sled, maybe there's a chance, right? So I get on the sled. Boom, wave hits us from behind. Giant whitewater. I headbutt the back of the ski.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't even realize it at the time. I'm just so overwhelmed with adrenaline and just the world is tearing us apart. And I can tell we're still level and we're still pointed in. And I'm starting to think, we got a chance. We might make this. And right about when I think that, the ski falls into a big turbine, right? And literally starts to get pulled down one of these things. And then the ski stops and I get ripped off the sled and I just keep going down, 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 down. And that's when I realized, damn, dude, you're in trouble. This is bad. You know, like if you were ever really going to have, this could be it. But if you're going down, I remember that moment. You're going down fighting, so let's get going, right? And I just start swimming, and I take about 3 strokes, and then all of a sudden, bam, I get hit with these 3 giant kind of convulsions. No idea what's going on. I've completely lost control of my body. It's like my neck is whiplashing, and I'm not trying to figure out what's going on. I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. The convulsions stop. I take inventory. My hand's still working. My leg's still working. Yes, that's all that matters right now. I'll figure the rest out later. So I start swimming again. And I'm swimming, and my eyes are open. It's pitch black. Swimming 3, 4, 5 strokes. It's still pitch black. And finally, a little bit of light in the water. It's like, yes, I might make this. A couple more strokes. There's more light. Then it gets real light. Take that last stroke. Right as I'm inhaling, Brett Lickle, carbon copy situation of what just happened.
No.
You're just like, oh no.
Brett is right there. I'm looking at the whitewater. He's going to get mowed no matter what. But this time I realize if I don't get on that sled and hold on for dear life, I might not make it back to the surface this time. Because now I've got First wave, yeah, everybody's going to survive the first wave. I don't care who you are. I don't care how big it is. 100-foot wave, you're not going to die on the first wave. You've got too much energy, too much reserves of oxygen.
Survival instinct.
And you've got too much energy. Second wave, you're probably even going to survive too. But the third one is when you'll start to have trouble, right? And that's where I was at. So I get on the sled, and sure enough, bam, half second later, whitewater hits us. Only this time I realize if I don't hold on to this sled for dear life, I might not make it back up. And I go to the point of, even if my body's gone, my hands still better be holding on to this rescue sled, because it's life or death now, right? And so I've got a death grip on the sled. Instantly, we're tumbling. I can tell Brett's holding on to the ski because his feet are hitting me in the head. My feet are hitting him. We're tacoing, rolling with the ski and the sled, but neither of us is going to let go. And sure enough, eventually, boom, it stops, and you can feel the ski just start heading for the surface.
So you had a flotation device.
So we had
a boat.
So I'm holding on that thing. It's pulling me to the surface. I'm like, I'm going to survive. And Brett swims out. I swim out. We break the surface at the same time. We make eye contact. And the first thing I said was, I love you. You just saved my life. Now get me on another freaking wave, or I might not ever surf again.
Whoa.
So, I mean, I could tell at that point I was petrified. And he rushes me over to the rescue boat, or the mothership. I grab another board, and we're like,
board is on the rocks. The other one's gone.
The other one's gone. I would say within 1 minute, I'm back on the rope. I've got my second board.
No vest.
No vest. We're headed towards the peak. And I yell to Brett, I go, I don't care if it's 2 foot or 200. You get me on the first thing that moves out there. I don't care if somebody's on it. Get me on the first wave. And so sure enough, luckily nobody's on it. He gets me onto, 14, 15 footer, nothing really intimidating. And I'm so far on the shoulder, and something's wrong with the board. And I'm thinking, God, did I forget to put a fin in or something? And I look down, and my knees are shaking so bad.
Oh my gosh.
I like barely have control of the board. I'm like, dude, you got to get control of yourself. That's when I realized how traumatic that experience just was. So I make it I'm so far on the channel, no matter what happens, if I fall right now, I'm already in the channel, basically. So same thing. I'm like, I don't care what it is. I don't care who's on it. You put me on the first thing that's moving. And we went through that for about, 5 or 6 waves, and I finally started to calm down. And I ended up with a decent day. But I want to say the mental scars from that experience lasted at least 3 years. At least 3 years. It changed the way I surfed. It changed my philosophy on flotation. So from that day on, always, some days 2 flotation vests. Pull the cord.
Yeah. Wow.
And was it 2004 where you guys started getting really crowded, and that would have been a couple years, 3 years after that incident?
Yep.
And you guys were tackling the left, and no one was eyeballing that left.
Yep.
And it was like 85 feet or whatever it might have been.
Well, it did start getting crowded, just like you said. And while Laird was still willing to fight and press for his waves at the right, I wasn't. And I realized nobody wants the lefts. I can have any single wave I want, because even if there's somebody on it, I know they're going right, because they don't want nothing to do with the left. So basically, my last 4 years, all I did was ride left, because I could have every wave I wanted, And occasionally I'd go right, but for the most part,
you weren't like hunting down the rights. And I mean, I think that was probably the most crowded it's ever been, even up till now.
Oh yeah.
That was the peak, perhaps, of crowd.
That was when the hype was similar to how Nazare is today. That was where the biggest waves were being ridden. That's where you can go from literally zero. You get a 80-foot wave, and you're overnight hero with a career.
It must have been interesting, because you guys obviously were doing training and in the summertime doing alternative type sports that would help facilitate a survival situation. And then you probably couldn't imagine how could you live through that? Like somebody falling, because if you guys were falling, it was like, all right, straightening out, big whitewater hit, you probably survived the first hit, or you're pulling into a barrel. You're not falling on maybe going straight down the wave, you know?
Yep.
And so you'd see somebody fall because their stance was 16 inches wide and just watch their body slowly go over and, you know, they'd break their back or something. And you're just, wow. I mean, I'm sure that would have been like, you guys in a way kind of created a monster because for the first few years, no one was really filming it. And it was pretty like, oh, let's keep it underground a little bit. And then, you know, you reap the benefits of riding this insane wave. But at the same time, you know, everyone saw it and was like, we got to go there. And
well, yeah, we created the mess. There's no doubt about it. And I don't blame people because when you see images like that and the people riding them, almost everyone that takes themselves serious is like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. Right?
Yep.
And the attention it was garnering for all of us. Yeah. Get a picture, get a barrel, do something. I mean, that one wave that Garrett McNamara got where he got wasn't the first barrel. Laird had gotten barrels, there's no doubt. But that was the most significant barrel anybody had ever gotten to that point. And he already had a big name in big wave surfing. But that, I think, really launched or put him back in that limelight for a while, where he is now a legit player in this whole toe surfing thing. And then he took the ball and ran with it, you know, way past that. But that was really a significant moment in his career.
Yeah, that's interesting. We were climbing in the trees that day, and that was literally one of my first memories ever. Was like looking up, seeing the thing spit, and then his red vest coming out the channel with his arms up.
And I think Dane Kealoha towed him in at the time. And it was pretty crazy. I mean, still, that's probably arguably one of the best barrels still to this day ever gotten. Because if you're, I think, a good enough surfer, and he definitely is to ride those waves, but he also isn't afraid to eat it.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like if you know how to read a wave, to be in his position, you have to be like, oh, I'm not going to make it.
Straight Hail Mary.
Like straight Hail Mary. Not even a Hail Mary. Like, I'm not going to make it. like, do I straighten out? Because he's so deep.
The lip went like this right over him, that close.
I think, yes, he was deep, or he completely disappeared behind the curtain. I know I've seen deeper barrels since, but in your mind, you always feel like what you saw first were the best images, the best surfing, the best everything, right?
Yeah, sure.
But when you go back and look at it 15, 20 years later, you're like, maybe I wasn't quite what I thought it was compared to what you're doing now. You know, I honestly, I was extremely critical of your surfing early on because, well, I was surfing with Michael Jordan. And what I saw him do, in my mind, no one was ever going to touch, right? He is the GOAT, and I'm just sorry. You
100%.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, while your surfing was really good by anybody's standards, it wasn't Laird, right? But I can honestly say the surfing I'm seeing you do now is as Laird-esque as anything I've ever seen.
Thank you. That means a lot.
You know? And yeah, in my mind, no, there's no way Kai can make a turn like Laird. But I went back and looked at some of the surfing Laird was doing. I am suffering from old-timer's disease, just like most people are. The images that I saw in real time with my own eyes that are so burned into my memory grew with time. But in some of the footage I've seen you do and some of the turns I'm seeing you make, they might not have the brute force that Laird carried because of his strength and his size. But I'm telling you, Kai, it's really impressive to see. I am now thoroughly impressed.
Well,
you know,
that's an interesting segue because towards the end of your guys' time out there there's a 16-year-old kid that is fiending to get out there and learn the ropes. And what I mean, not to skip too far ahead, but if there's anything else from the era before, but yeah.
I remember getting a call from Dave, and I'd been patiently waiting, like, because our dad told us, like, well, you have to get like the okay. I mean, and that was the culture back then. And that's the way I think it still should be. It's like, all right, you're ready. Like, if they call you, you can go. But until then, you're not going out there. And while there was other peers of mine that were kind of starting to go out there, I wasn't going to go until I got like A-okay. And it was that first foil session.
Yep, I remember.
And
you wore my boots. They're way too big for you.
Well, my perspective on that is like, I got the call, and it's funny because when we first pulled up, well, I got to do the whole experience, which I was really still grateful for. Go to your dad's house. Yeah. You know, Laird was there. You guys were doing your thing. Launched the skis. I was with our friend, our uncle, Hanai Uncle Barkley. Yeah. We went on my dad's jet ski, and we were like just trailing behind. And once we got out there and I looked at the cliff, and I was like, oh, I came down here too soon. Like, all of a sudden it was real. Because when you're on the cliff, I felt like I was an expert.
Yep.
Because I'd watched, our dad would take us out to watch you guys. Like, it was our snow day. And I remember just looking at that cliff going, oh my gosh, like, do I really want to do this? Because then I saw the wave, and it wasn't the biggest day by any means, but we were foiling.
Yeah.
And you had snowboard boots on, and you guys were tearing the place apart. It was cool because sitting in the channel, watching, and you guys were going left at like still as fast as I've ever gone on a foil out there. And if you fall, you break both your legs, but there's no such thing as falling back then. You know, it's like, you just don't fall. And I remember borrowing your board, having my boots, which were actually my mom's at the time. And I had used them so much that the sole had separated from the salt exposure.
So it wasn't my boots that you used?
No. It was the first run. And I remember, like, I think you guys were still like, I don't know, like, we'll get a shoulder, you know, like Laird, you were the one that told me. Laird was like, oh no, like he was riding waves on the left on his other jet ski. You know what I mean? Like, this was just a sideshow thing. And I remember stepping in and going, and then feeling my boots get looser and looser, and the soles had come off, and I was floating. Now that I know you can foil without boots, which granted, those foils were a whole nother monster because they weighed 35 pounds and they were very low aspect, unstable. I was like, I thought about it. I was like, I rode for a while, and I'm like, I have no choice. I can't catch a wave like this. So I just kind of let go of the rope. And I just remember you turning the jet ski around and the look of disappointment, like, oh, this kid can't even foil. And I didn't have words to create.
I can do it, coach. I can do it.
And it was the moment. And all I could think was lift my feet. I was like, and I just lifted my feet, and you could see the bottom of my feet. And then you started cracking up. You thought it was so funny because the soles were still attached to your foil.
I don't remember that.
And then you're like, take my boots. And then I was swimming in them because I was 16 at the time, but I was probably 5'3". Like, I was a pretty small kid. And and then I ended up getting a couple waves, and the highlight wave it was an insider, and it kind of broke around me and exploded. And, you know, I was like, if I fall, I'm going to break both my legs, was like the thing. And I kicked out, and you were like, ooh, you would have felt that one if you fell. And I was like, that was like okay, like, I did it. I actually rode the wave. Because if I was just shoulder hopping, I was like, did you really ride the wave? But it's a point of pride to say that, gosh, the first time I ever rode this spot was with Dave and Laird, and I was on a foil board with snowboard boots on. Like that's still gnarlier than I think anything I'm doing now. And it took me like 15 years to get back to foiling out there because the foils got too efficient, too light or whatever. And it was almost like we went backwards for big wave foiling.
Yep.
And then I'm finally at a place where it's like, okay, now I can go beyond it. But I still think that was still top session.
Yeah. And there was another day that I was on the boat watching you guys. And that was like the most special thing to me. I was a kid still. I wasn't anywhere thinking about that, but I think there was a day in 2008. I think it was one of the last big days that you and Laird were towing together out there, and it felt like sort of the passing of the torch because it was a 2-day swell. and he was wanting to surf, but you guys were like just doing your thing for the first day. And then the second day you guys towed him in, but that sort of felt like the passing of the torch. And then after that, you guys, moved on to other things. And then that was the focus. That was a pretty cool thing to see as a kid. Like it just like watching all the videos and seeing you guys do what you're doing in real life. And then seeing my brother do it.
The torch might've been passed, but I still had to climb the mountain. And that took it's only maybe in the last 3 years where all of a sudden I got over my fear enough to be like, okay, I can take that risk now. Whereas before it was like the fear would like, I know that's possible, but maybe not this time. The next session. Whereas now it's like, okay, you do something long enough, big waves, like you get the experience. And granted, you guys laid the framework for safety. So now you fall on a big wave. If you do everything right and you have the right crew, you can go back out and really not expend that much energy. And we spent a lot of time sup racing, which I think was like the foundation of my endurance for big waves. I mean, that was the best thing. I was actually more scared of Molokai to Oahu than Jaws at a certain point because it was like, remember it was, you were winning it. It was Connor who won one. And then it was like Travis Grant. And then I had never won one. And I was just like, it was such a monkey on my back, but that felt like Jaws. Cause it was like, that channel's so long, 32 miles. And it hurts way more than actually wiping out at Jaws.
Well, that's what I was going to say. At Jaws, you might drive away untouched, just euphoric, right? Having not really paid any price. You are somewhere down the line, but there's those days where it's pure gold, It's only icing. You didn't have to deal with any of the cake.
Yeah.
But Molokai, if you've done that race, and I know you've done it enough to know, yeah, there's something at the end of this, but there is so much suffering in between here and there.
I've never been in more pain in my life than that race, especially when the wind would not show up and we'd do a flat water race across the channel, turn into a total sprint.
And we're not talking minutes, we're talking hours. The mental games, the physical torture.
I want to quit.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, I got to do it, and you see the guy up ahead, you're like, I might be able to catch him. And then they just are just there the whole way.
It's like you can come up, and I have come up with some really good reasons to quit. You can come up with 100 reasons to quit as long as the last one is the reason to keep going. You only need that one.
I always thought, well, if I just paddle faster, it'll be done quicker. For the best option would be get on the boat, but I can't do that, especially when I'm paddling with this caliber of people, because I don't want them to look down on me. Like, whoa,
the boat's not an option.
No, right? So you cut the boat out, and then it's like, you have your little moment, like, I just want to cruise there. And you're like, but I'm going to be out here longer. If I just paddle harder, it'll just be over sooner.
Gosh.
But and then actually one of my inspirations that finally I wanted in 2016, after getting second to you or Connor or Travis or whoever, and then I would always remind myself from then on, I was like, wait, Laird and Dave did the entire island chain on a bike, on a canoe, or on a sup. And they did it like continuously, if I'm not mistaken.
We had one day off.
I would say, did you guys call that the Hawaii 500?
I think that's what something like that.
So, I mean, for people that don't know what that is, it's from like was it the most southern tip?
Yep. South Point, Big Island, to North Shore, the lighthouse on Kauai.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. I mean, there's been years where I've been wanting to do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got a foil now. It'd probably be a little easier, But then at the same time, I'm like, right as summer kind of gets going, I'm like, oof, that one, that hurts, Because I've done Maui to Oahu, and I'm like, that was a long day.
It's a long day.
But you guys were...
It was a long week.
Core lords.
Oh.
It was a long week.
Did you do that on prone paddleboard?
Stand up.
Stand up.
Cool. And I did the Molokai Hoi with my canoe club in the middle of it.
Oh my god.
Timed it so, I could take half a day off.
So you were in race mode.
Yeah. So I raced
which is
across.
Another level of crossing.
Yeah, I raced iron because I was steering in the 6-man. And then after the race, had a sub sandwich, jumped on the bike, and rode up to Mokuleia.
Oh, so you guys launched Mokuleia side?
Yes. Well, when we paddled from Oahu to Kauai, we got in the boat at Haleiwa, drove out to Kaina Point, and then got in the water there.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is the funniest thing, the most painful thing. But like, I think about, okay, all the channels, like you have a first kind of big stretch, you know, Maui to Oahu, and then, or Maui, or Big Island to Oahu. Then like the fun train is kind of like Maui to Molokai because his bumps are really good. And maybe not that time.
Light. It was
light.
I mean, it was still easy,
but not
very big bumps.
You have 96 miles from Oahu to
starting
Kauai.
10:30 at night.
In the dark.
What?
And you're just, were you guys like, is there a shark gonna like bump me off my board ever? Or do you just kind of get in the rhythm?
I was petrified. But, okay, so if you want me to go into that story a little bit.
I love that story a little bit.
So we go eat dinner in Haleiwa, knowing that we're going to get on the boat at like 10, motor out to Kaina, and then jump in the water, right? But there's zero wind. And we're kind of anticipating doing every channel with trades, you know, a little bit of help would be nice, right? So I'm thinking there's no way we're going to paddle from Oahu to Kauai with no trades. And I'm like, all right, we'll call it, but I'll go along. I'll play along with the charade for a while. But there's no way.
Yeah.
I mean,
the crew will cut it before we get there.
It's the stupidest thing you could do. Whatever. But I ain't going to be the one that says uncle first, right?
But it was just you and Laird.
No, and there was a crew from California that was doing relay with us, Jeff Sweet and Don Wildman.
Okay, yep.
You know, rest in peace. And Alan Cadiz was escorting them. So Alan was on site. But so we get in the water at 10:30. There's zero wind, full moon. And I'm thinking, all right, we'll do this for an hour or something. We'll call this. Be stupid.
We'll get the clips.
Yeah, it'd be stupid to do this. Hour goes by. 2 hours go by. I'm like thinking, wow, he's really playing this up, you know? But we'll call it soon, I'm sure. And then this storm starts to move in, I know, at about 3 hours, and the wind's in our face. Clouds have come over, it's raining, and now it's blowing about 20 miles an hour.
No
the
way.
Wrong direction.
Oh, gosh.
We're still paddling, and that's when it finally dawns on me. He's not going to quit if I don't quit, and I'm not going to quit if he doesn't quit. Oh, shit.
So you guys are like just pushing each other, like you're waiting for one guy to just say like uncle.
Yeah, but we're not right next to each other. We each have our own escort boats. But I just figure at some point their escort boat will call mine and say, hey, this is stupid. Let's call it. We'll try again tomorrow, right? And then that's when I had the realization. He's not going to say uncle. I'm not going to say uncle. Oh, shit. That means we're going to be out here for a while. And that's when it really hit me like, okay, you better pace yourself because this might take a while. And fortunately, that storm passed and the wind eventually died and just kept motoring. You know, clouds would come, moon would come out. By that point, you have mild seasickness from not being able to really see the swells.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, I'm already grouchy. I'm tired. I've lost my fear of sharks because I'm like, if some shark comes and fucks with me right now, it will be sorry to mess with me. I'm just so grumpy and angry.
I got a paddle too.
I got a paddle. I'm just like, this sucks. Why did I do this?
And so did you guys ever sleep?
Not on that paddle.
No, but like across.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I was gonna like, did you guys just go like
no. We
sleep?
Every night we slept for sure. But that paddle ended up being, I think it was 22 and a half hours
Straight.
Oh my goodness.
That doesn't seem possible.
We would stop out there. We never got on the boat.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd have him hand me a sandwich and some drinks.
Would you guys
cookies.
were you guys near each other or would you be doing your separate deal?
We were pretty near each other.
And then getting there, Were you like, I gotta get on a freaking bike and pedal all the way to?
Well, when we got to Kauai, it was dark again. And there was some media there. And thankfully, they just wanted to talk to Laird. Because I was so tired and grumpy when I got in. I just, right onto the beach. My wife, Shayna, met me. She knew where the room was. I just straight to the room. They had dinner there, ate, and went to sleep. I've never been that tired in my life.
Must have been the best sleep of your life.
Oh,
I can't even
blacked
imagine.
out.
God. Just, I mean, from about the 10th hour to the 16th hour, I was absolutely sure the GPS had broken and we were going in the wrong direction because I kept paddling over the boat.
So you guys started at night and then you were paddling in the day. Like you watched
Yes,
the sunrise.
all day.
Like,
Watch
wow.
the sunrise. The boat would keep us going in the right direction. You know, at about 10, 12 hours, I'm thinking there's no way we're going in the right direction. I should see Kauai by now. We didn't see Kauai until like the 16th or 17th hour. And then you realize, okay, we paddled for that long to see Kauai. It's the tiniest little speck on the horizon. Oh, shit. That means we're going to still be out here for a while.
Oh,
Yeah, there were some mental challenges, let's say, to just keep paddling. And of course we're nothing close to race pace. Just paddling.
Keep it going.
Just keep going. Pace you can live with, but at the end of that paddle,
Any music or just your own
oh,
thoughts?
I had music. I definitely had music, but I had so many blisters on my hands. I had taped the day before so that the blisters on my palm side would be protected, but the tape had created blisters on the back side of my hands
way.
from all the movement of the paddles, right? So
Probably your
I had
hands were all
blisters
moist.
on both sides of my hand. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. But I learned a lot. Some of it I could have lived without, but there was a few moments where I learned I had so much more available to me than I ever thought possible. And so that gave me a lot of confidence to know when times are really, really, really tough and you think you're at your limit, you are not. I promise you, you are not. You have so much more if you can tap into it. And what helped me tap into it was breathing. It was breathing. There was a point where I was breathing so intently and ferociously that I basically had an out-of-body experience. And I had fallen about a solid mile behind Laird. And it was a moment where I kind of was like, I either need to go in full survival mode and be my own entity and not think of myself as part of Laird's deal to see if I can make it, just to make it, or you need to go to work and catch back up right now. And while I didn't fully commit to catching up, I was like, let's just start flirting with it. And that's where the breathing started. And it started to work. So I kicked up the breathing even more. And it started to work more. So I kicked up the breathing anymore. And at one point, I was literally like, and I had gotten myself to a point of exertion where I was somewhere between 95 and 100% of exertion with this breathing that was so intense that it was like I said, I had an out-of-body experience.
Wow.
Where I felt like I was hallucinating, but I caught back up.
wow.
Yeah. And that was a moment I'll never forget because I pull up next to Laird and I could tell he heard me, but he was like, nah, I'm hearing things. So
Was it still dark?
No, it was in the light. So I paddle a little more, and now I'm like the nose of my board is right on the tail of his. And he looks back and he kind of does that double take. Like, whoa. How did you get there? Because he knew I was way back.
Yeah.
It took me about an hour and a half to go through this experience, but I caught back up. And he never said anything. And I realized, holy shit, he could crush me right now if he wanted to. If he presses 1 ounce too hard, I'll die. Like literally, I'll die.
That's great.
But to Laird's credit, he brought it down about 3 to 4%, which was just enough to let me hang on and finish with him. And we still paddled another 4 hours.
That's
5 hours.
insane.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a lot sweeter now to do it on a foil, I'm sure. Yeah, like if there was wind.
Yeah.
Have you done a normal sup down winder since you started foiling? Because we've done that a couple of times. It's just like, it's hard to go back, isn't it?
It is hard to go back. I did it not even that long ago. I did a one-man run with my son, Cash. I'm getting him into the one-man. I figure, if I go on the stand-up, it'll be about, I can take my time and paddle easy. He started to figure it out, so I actually had to start to work a little bit.
Read the bumps.
That's when that reality came back, like, oh my God, this is so much harder.
And there's nothing quite like it, the full body workout though. Like I took out the board I won the Molokai to Wahoo on, the 1711, I think it was, and it felt really fast in terms of like what it is. But I was like, from just going from Maliko to my house 5 miles, the bottoms of my feet all the way to the top of my head, I was like, that is the best workout I've had in a long, long time. You can't make that up in a gym. It's so continuous. And I'm like, dude, on a foil, you do that in under 20 minutes. You do that in 17 minutes and you don't even break a sweat. You're like, okay, I'm warmed up. I could probably, go a little longer. But that's a little segue. It's like, because all of a sudden foiling had kind of a seismic shift to, the downwinding and then even like just paddling into small waves. How was that experience going from like, okay, we're riding the foils to ride the biggest waves ever ridden to now, can we ride the smallest waves ever ridden? Did it essentially spark a new light into foiling? Like, wow, this is so enjoyable. Or was it like, wow, this is just a different form of foiling for me?
So after your video came out that rocked the world, oddly enough, I was like, well, that's really cool, but that's not me. Like I wasn't motivated or inspired. I thought it was really cool. Like, that's awesome. But I want to say at that point, there were already some videos out, if I remember right, of guys sub-foiling. I think it was France, might have been California, maybe can't remember for sure, but I saw a couple of them, and guys were kind of doing it in waves, but it looked bad. Like, it didn't look good.
Yeah.
The foiling I knew was so much better than that, right? And actually, I'm skipping ahead. That's after I learned. Let me get back to where I saw the video, and I was not motivated. And then I saw you down in Fiji, and you're like, come on, man, you gotta try, right? And I really didn't want to. I really was skeptical if I would be able to do it without the boots.
Yeah.
I was so used to the boots. And you're like, no, you'll do it. You can do it. You can do it. And you convinced me. So, we jumped in the water. I actually did it. And I was like, oh, whoa, kind of can do it. But I was petrified the whole time, And then you even told me into some little waves on the inside of pools. And I kind of glided. And I remember turning and eating it a few times. But didn't have a bad experience. I mean, I didn't fully taco myself. But I was like, oh, okay, that went better than I thought. But I was so scared the whole time, I didn't enjoy it, And then I got back to Maui, and I ran into Brett Lickle down at the harbor one day, and he had just gotten back to the dock after foiling. He's like, you got to try. I was like, nah, whatever, nah. And he was really persistent. So I was like, okay, just to get you to shut up, I'll go out and get a wave, And it was only because of the experience I had with you that I knew I could do it. Mm-hmm. I just didn't necessarily want to do it. Mm-hmm. So I paddle out, I get one wave, I paddle back to the dock, and I'm like, there, you happy now? I did it. Not into it at all. And it was all successful. Like, caught a wave, glided, brought it back. Same thing happens the next day. Come on, man, you got to try it. all right, whatever. God, would you shut up? So I paddle out. I get one wave. It's the same thing, just straight as an arrow. Second wave, I veered just a little bit. Third wave, I'm like, hey, let me veer a little more. And it was like the second or third turn, and it was just like, oh my God, this is epic, right? I go straight back to the dock. I give Brett back his board. Alex is on the phone. 30 seconds later, dude, you gotta hook me up, man. If I can put the tunnel in my board, I don't care what. Give me one, you know. And just, I don't think I got back on a normal board for 8 months after that.
Wow.
Just sick.
I don't know why it took me so long to get over the hump, but once I did, wow.
Well, once you did, I remember it was like almost immediate. You got your own setup and you had the straps on the sub and you were already popping like windsurfing airs. And at the time, no one was like, you were doing it with boots. I can remember seeing footage of you guys doing like insane airs, even backside airs that a lot of people weren't doing for a while. And then you proved that you could do it on a sub, you know, with the big board in the full. And I think you said something, comment like something about like, why isn't anyone, you know, doing airs yet or something?
So back to the story I was starting a moment ago. Exactly that. I saw the guys riding the SUP foil, and it looked really like, that's not foiling, man. Foiling's so much better than that. Why is nobody hitting whitewater? Come on, you know? So I go out at Kanaha. I have the foot straps. I'm like, all right, let's freaking take this up a notch. I do this big roundhouse, bam, into the whitewater, and I'm thinking, this is going to be sweet. Next thing I know, I've tacoed. The back of my head's up against the mast. I'm rolling in the whitewater. I'm stuck in the straps. I went, oh, this is why nobody's hitting whitewater.
Those foils were pretty like, they get stuck in a direction, right? Like,
well, I was centered over the board. Like I was, my balance was centered. And when I hit with such force, it just threw me to the outside of the turn. So I realized, okay, if I'm going to hit whitewater, I've got to overcommit to the inside. So if you're going to fall, you're going to fall inside, and no consequence falling on the inside, right? So I lined it up again, overcommitted to the inside, had the paddle there to brace me, hit the whitewater, bam, game on. Okay, it's on. And then that's when I started banging whitewaters this way, that way, doing airs and stuff.
and then not shortly after, Austin was doing like the alley-oop spins, right?
It's funny you say that, because I was just about to say, for about 30 seconds, I got to be king of the world.
Yeah.
And then
King of the hill?
King of the hill for about 30 seconds. And then Austin learned to foil, and that was over real quick.
Yeah.
And
no,
you too.
No, those thing about the new emerging sport, the best part is there's so much can be done, and like someone's doing something new every afternoon. And if you miss one day, one session, you're like, I'm falling behind. And then eventually, you know, it gets like too crazy. I mean, without the foil now, it's like so many sports wouldn't exist. Like parawinging wouldn't exist, winging wouldn't exist. I mean, a lot of these downwind races, now you have to sign up the first minute.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're not in it. Like, and there's wait lists now, and I'm like, this is taking me back to old SUP days. Like, but even more now.
Well, to kind of bring it full circle back to Peʻahi, when we were riding it, and especially towards the end of our run, I always knew, whether it be you or somebody else, was going to take everything we had done and move it further down the field, right? It's just the way nature works. It's going to happen. And I was actually quite excited because I knew there was more to be done. We had barely scratched the surface, but the consequences were so high, and where I was at surfing, I wasn't willing to push that hard and pay the price that I'd have to pay to do flips like you're doing, right? And so for a while, I saw you moving it down the field, and you were improving on what we had done, but I hadn't seen anything new until, like you said, about 3 years ago, or maybe even sooner, where you started doing completely new stuff, whether it be incorporating the wing, the foil, just everything. There was this whole new element, and that's what I was hoping for. I love to see that creativity in consequential situations. Like you are being creative. How we were down at Sprex when it was 1 foot. You're essentially taking that initiative to create these new moves in such a high risk situation that we knew was. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew there was just too much potential, right? And with the advent of the wing and the foil and your creativity and your ability, it's so fun to watch now. Like just that little pop you did in front of the whitewater with the wing and the foil and the whole thing the other day. It was like, the kid's off. He's got a screw loose, which is exactly what I want to say when I watch you surf or whoever it is. It's awesome, man. It's really fun to watch.
Well, and it's really interesting because for me, I've always felt like if I was on a seesaw and I had like my athletic side, but then I had the equipment side. And usually I always like to have the equipment a little bit ahead of where my level is. And then as soon as my level gets a little higher than equipment, you try to figure out how to make it better. And, going back to 2012, when the first board I ever shaped was with you at your house. And I ended up winning the Sunset Beach Pro on that board.
I remember that.
And it's my one of my prized possessions now because it was actually a bummer because it took me until last June to get back into shaping because it was one of those things like, well, you kind of doubt yourself like, oh, they know better than me. Everyone knows better. But over a period of time, you get enough experience and enough feedback and knowledge. I'm like, I think I can just put I know exactly what I want. And I can confidently say, this is what I need. Not making it for anyone else, but for what I need, this is what I need exactly. But it was that board that it was always lingering in the back of my mind. Be like, that board was so good, and got to do it with Dave. And I mean, I can go on about where I've been going with my equipment. I'd say for me, the seismic shift is when my equipment felt super dialed in with me. Like the whole thing with foiling out there with the wing and doing all that, I was sort of waiting to finally get on a foil that I felt really comfortable on. And once I did, I was like, oh yeah, now I know what to do. But before it was like purely like, will my foil just stay in the water if I go this fast?
Right.
And lefts were always safer because I could kind of go into the wind and slow myself down. And then the rights had the big boils and the barrel. And then finally it was like, I went to Nazare and that's the worst place to ever foil because there's so much sand in the water.
Oh.
It literally adds density.
Right.
And the boils, you can't see the boils because there's so much sand. It kind of masks the boils like from really that clean water coming up. And you go there and then there's this major reverb. It makes Jaws seem like just it's the most perfect big wave I've surfed, but it really stood it out. And I was there this last year testing a foil and the logos off my foil got sanded off from going so fast. Like, how they print them on? And it was they weren't completely off, but they'd fade more and more.
Wow.
Just from the sand.
That's crazy.
And so I'm like, okay, if I can foil here, what can I could do Jaws, really start pushing it.
Yeah.
Then Mavericks happened. And I was like, oh, I want to foil Mavericks. And I was like, okay, I can get over that step. And then the last Jaws so came in, it was windy and bumpy and kind of ugly for out there north. I was like, all right, this feels insane. This is perfect. And it was just taking the leap of faith finally and just trusting the equipment was going to work. Almost had to leave to come back to it. But full circle, you've been shaping now. When did you start shaping? It was probably earlier than 2012 when I did my project with you.
Yes.
But you've had a substantial influence on the way people ride boards because I started off with the SUP board cut down to 10.6 or 10.4. And then I ended up having a shorter version that was basically just a rockered out SUP. And then it went all short, as short as you can go. And it was a 5.6, 24 inches wide, 6 inches thick. And then all of a sudden, Dave, you came with something completely different than anything we'd ridden. Something narrower that we didn't know you could stand on. Tell us about that, please.
Well, so in my downwind journey, I always felt that at that time, prone foiling was growing much more rapid than stand-up was. And I was like, if these prone guys only knew what they were missing, they'd get out and start downwinding somehow, right? But there was no access for them. And so my first intent was to make a prone board for downwinding, which meant I was going to have to make it really efficient, you know? So the first kind of, I think I made a 6-something, and it was 19, 20 inches wide. And I had no intention of standing up on it whatsoever.
So it was a prone specific.
Proper prone downwind board. And failed miserably, not even close to big enough for me. But Jeremy Riggs, one day I had it down at the harbor, went, I wonder if you can stand on these things. Because the volume was there, but it was so narrow, it never even crossed my mind.
You had something like, no one probably up to that point had ever shaped a board. I mean, eventually it became 16 inches wide, right?
Yeah.
But like, how thick were they? 7 inches thick?
No, at that point, they were 19, 20 inches wide. So it didn't need to be that thick compared to today's standard.
Yeah.
Compared to what the norm was back then, it was thicker for sure. Like 6.5, and most boards at that point were like 5, 4.5, something like that. And Jeremy Riggs went and grabbed his paddle. Like, I wonder if I can paddle this thing standing up. And he did.
Dink.
And yeah, that was like, shoot. Well, if he can do it, I wonder if I can do it, you know? And then I tried, and I struggled more than him because I weigh so much more than he does. But I saw the light. Like, ooh, okay. And I made a little bigger one. And then it was like, all right.
What was the length on it?
I think the longest one I made was 6'6" at that point.
So that's pretty short for today's standards.
Oh,
now.
really short by today's standards, but long by that time's standard.
Pretty crazy because the race winners all have longer boards.
Yeah.
It's faster somehow.
And then what the impetus for what got me past 7 was I ran into Chris Pugdalau, and he happened to have one of my old 8.2s, one of the first foil boards I'd ever shaped for foiling. I was like, that's really interesting. Let me try that thing again real quick. So I think it was 26 wide, 8.2, and I paddled out on it prone and caught a couple waves, and it blew my mind how much more efficient it was.
Oh, wow.
And so learning what I had just learned from the 6.6 and the prone downwinders, trying that old 8.2 from a couple years prior and going, I might need to make a new version of one of these. So that's what I did. I made an 8-foot, 21, something like that, 22, and went and tried it, and it blew my mind.
Just boop.
Just blew my mind. I went out to caught a couple waves, could not believe how much easier it was. I want to say I got 3 waves, and I was losing my mind, so I jumped in my car, and I was going to head home, and I called Austin. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know. Meet me at Ka'a in 10 minutes, you know? So I drove back to Ka'a. I made him go out on it. I wanted to, I didn't know if I was tripping or if this is real. And so I had him go try it, and he's like, whoa, that's a whole different deal. And that's when I knew I had something. And then I went and tried it out in the ocean. And prone, I think, at first.
Wow.
And that was some of my first successful on Maui prone downwind.
Yeah, I mean, that design revolution made downwind foiling accessible. The boards that he was talking about, well, you'd have to struggle to get up on these things.
Mini heart attacks.
Yeah,
every
it
time.
was. I went back and tried one like a year ago just to see. That's all I had, and it was like shocking the difference. That was a pretty cool thing, and now any given day, you just if you're surfing Okipa, you just like all day, and then they're all that design. No one rides anything but that sort of type of board, which is pretty darn cool.
Well, I mean, it works. It makes it so much easier, and I think one of the things that it unlocked, besides just being able to catch ocean bumps easier and making it more accessible is now making these really tiny, fast wings accessible. Because prior to that, it was so hard to get up, you couldn't ride a tiny foil, right? You needed a foil that had a lot of lift. Otherwise, you weren't going to get up.
I know the race standard now, like Finn Spencer's on a 430 front wing, and then all the fastest guys are on 600s.
Imagine trying that on a 5.6, one of our old wave boards.
Oh,
Impossible.
You'd have to catch a wave first and pray to God you never came down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, I think that conversation went from the tracking it from the skiing all the way to the foiling. That's and I feel like there's still a lot more, so we're probably gonna have to.
If you get another idea about the future or something you want to talk about, we'll be happy to have you back on to talk about it.
But before we wrap up, let the people know what you're up to with the Kalama camp. So that's like a really cool thing you got going on.
Yeah, so basically the Kalama camps have kind of distilled down to just Namotu for the time being. And as you guys well know, Namotu is the best place on this planet that I've come to know so far. It literally is my favorite place on earth. And to be able to share that with people, and yes, the waves are fun, there's no doubt. The water's amazing. The fish, the sunsets, the food are incredible. But the people, the culture, the vibe, that island has magic. It literally does. And after spending a week there, it resets my philosophy. It resets me psychologically. And that is such an important part of my annual wellness, I guess you'd say. Getting my mind right. That place gets your mind right. It puts everything in perspective of how simple life should be, right? And so to get to share that with people through my Kalama camps is really a joy, and I see a lot of people benefit and come away with those smiles and those memories like I do.
Yeah, that's pretty darn cool. Well, on that point, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. We're going to have you on again because I know there's a ton of stories that are still
I feel like there's a lot of meat still on that bone.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Yeah. There are a lot of questions we still have, so we'll have to do it again.
Well, gentlemen, it was really a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. It's fun to talk about these old times and share them with you. We haven't had one of these conversations in a long time, so thank you very much for having me.
I had a little